Boom, we are live and I'm fired up. We got a lot of stuff to cover today. We are going to have a tremendous amount of fun. So buckle up, put your hard hat on. There's a lot to cover, and we're going to do a deep dive into everything that's happening. But we're going to talk about the number of listings that are hitting the market with granularity, with certainty. So you know what those numbers are in my market. We're going to talk about the number of homes that left the market, expired and canceled. They did not sell. I'm looking at simple, and you guys can do this too, just a simple YouTube search. And here's what comes up when you look up housing market. First thing up in 2025, this is what will happen to the US housing market. Okay, we'll see. Expert, vicious correction headed for the housing market. Maybe he's right. Let's see what the data says. Let's see what the data supports. And also, let's take this with a massive grain of salt because prior to becoming a full-time, full-service real estate professional, I was a stockbroker for 18 years. So I traded through and experienced every recession, every great financial crisis, globally, domestically, the whole ball of wax. I've been finger on the pulse of trading through all of that, right? So it's not anything that's not new to me. And although the data that we're going to see paints a very clear picture as to what's happening in the markets that I service and the markets that I'm talking about, if we get a little bit more analytical and we look at some of the leading indicators, which we can watch right now that are happening in the builder sector or in the housing sector, we can start to read the tea leaves as to what's happening for the consumer, for the builders, and what the future forecasts look based on their own numbers. So we're going to get into all of that, but the news looks grim. Zillow estimates are plummeting. Zillow? Could they ever possibly get their Zestimate wrong? Impossible. I don't believe it. Their analytics are too good. Florida investors taking $150,000 losses. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. I do know that I just put a property under contract where we negotiated a $300,000 discount from list. But spoiler alert, and I hate to reduce my own shine because I certainly love to let my light shine. But the reality of it is, although that number seems impressive, it was $300,000 overpriced to begin with. So I'm not going to go ahead and break my arm trying to pat myself on the back about how great I am. I just knew that it was overpriced. And when we were there, I also knew that there was visual evidence that the owner needed to sell. They had to leave. And when all their stuff is boxed up, it's pretty clear that they are much more likely to be reality based after they've gotten their teeth kicked in by the market for several months. And the market is always right. The market doesn't care what you think about a home value. It doesn't care what I think about a home value. It certainly doesn't care what Jason Walter or Real Estate Mindset or Caitlin McGew, finally, homes are selling for less. Or Jackie Baker, the housing market will be stuck for years to come. Certainly doesn't care what Reventure thinks. Massive price cuts in Florida. Flippers are taking 20% haircuts. Wonder if they go to Supercuts to get those haircuts. Because, fun fact, don't ever get your haircut at Supercuts. But I could go on, and I'm not dissing any of those channels. They're all great channels. They're all very entertaining. But, oh, here's a good one. When Grant Cardone's on the front of the thumbnail, I know it is complete and utter bullshit, but expert warns U.S. is entering the greatest real estate correction, period. Well, thank you, Fox Business News. Correction in Florida's housing market, a bit overdue. You don't say. All right, well, in addition to all that, we got to look at what's going on with the home builders. We've got to look at what's happening in the builder and real estate sector as far as leading indicators are concerned. So we're going to talk about some stocks. We're going to talk about their guidance. We're going to talk about what analysts' expectations are for some of these sectors. And to be clear, I don't put much faith in what an analyst happens to say, because an analyst's opinion is simply their opinion, and they're wrong more often than they're right. But we're going to talk about all those things. We're going to talk about Project 2025. We may talk a little bit about politics here. And I'm looking out the window. Looks like my Instacart delivery is here, which means everything that's left at my front door is going to melt. So that is the punishment that I get for doing good work. But let's get right into it. And enough yapping out of me. Let's share the first screen, right? And partially this is self-serving, to be totally transparent, because I meet with lots of people who and speak to lots of people from around the country and around the world who want to buy homes in Florida. Some of them want to sell homes in Florida. And many times they have a very distorted perception as to what the reality of the housing market is in their hyperlocal market. So it's not necessarily true that everybody knows what's actually happening. A lot of people are informed by a lot of the bullshit that they see on TV, on YouTube, and it is what it is, right? But in the last 72 hours, there were 406 homes that were newly listed. 91 were canceled, 318 closings. So the idea that homes aren't selling is total and utter bullshit. Homes sell every single day in every single market condition that there is, period, forever. You might not get the price that you want, but the reality is homes always trade. It's always a good market for someone. Just depends on what side of the equation that you're on, whom it's good for. But 316 left the market, expired, unsold, 131 are pending, 156 are active under contract, 41 are withdrawn. 505 price changes. That's interesting. And 65 new coming soon listings. That's what the market is in the last 72 hours here in my market. Now, from there, let's go here, because we can't live in a vacuum. We can't bury our heads in the sand, and we can't believe the hype. But payroll numbers came out today, July 3rd. Happy almost 4th. Wearing my patriotic shirt. I might even put on my patriotic jacket, but I'll save that for tomorrow. But payroll numbers sucked. They came in less than expected. And I don't believe this number to begin with. I'm sure it will be revised. But the idea that we have a robust economy or a robust labor market is utter horseshit. Goes on to say private companies added 150,000 jobs in June, below the upwardly revised 157,000 in May, and the Dow Jones consensus estimate for 160,000. Okay. The pace of wage gains also moved lower for those who stayed in their jobs. Okay, so there's less jobs and they're making less money. Down almost 5% on a year-over-year basis for the smallest increase since August of 2021. And I'm not going to read the whole article because I don't want to bore you, and we've got a lot to cover here, but no bueno in terms of employment numbers. And when you don't have a job or you don't have money, well, then chances are you're probably not going to be making your car payment and or your mortgage payment. And I am seeing the fear and the concern around that uptick all across the board, period. Factual statement. Separate to that, it's also factually true that today I received 3 different phone calls from people out of state who desperately want to be in Florida, and they're all shopping for homes that are north of $1 million. Interesting. Why are they still wanting to move to Florida? There are lots of reasons, right? And it would not surprise me, irrespective of who wins the election, it's going to be a bonanza for real estate in Florida, no matter what. Because I suspect if Biden wins, well, then there's going to be a lot of people who want out of those types of states. And if Trump wins, I suspect he's going to do some things that juice the market a bit, which is not healthy. It's not necessarily good. It is what it is. But I suspect we're going to have a real estate reverse market crash, the likes of which we haven't seen yet. Or have we? Let's see what the numbers say. But that's the unemployment number, and it sucked. Which takes us to, and again, this is a little bit old. This is from Friday. The key Fed measure shows inflation rose 2.6% in May from a year ago as expected. As expected by who? 2.6% inflation on top of the already insane inflation is not a win. It's window dressing. This is a bullshit headline. It is not good. The inflationary price that we are paying, the diminishing purchasing power of the dollar is obvious, and everybody's feeling it across every income status that there is. Nobody likes paying more for goods and services than they did yesterday or the month before or a year ago or 2 years ago or 4 years ago. Nobody likes it. No bueno. And I think I'm just sharing things that everybody will agree with. But I don't know. Let me check the comments here, see if anybody loves inflation. Anybody out there loving inflation these days? Silvio? No, you're not loving it. All right. Which takes us to Bank of America. Bank of America says that the housing market to remain stuck until at least 2026. I wonder why that is. Let's see. The U.S. housing market is stuck, and we are not convinced it will become unstuck anytime soon. Well, if that's the case, then why do they put a 2026 deadline of when it will become unstuck? Let's read a little bit further. The affordability situation won't change without a recession. Well, I suspect half of America right now feels like they are in a recession. And I suspect the other half of the economy feels like they're not in a recession. But make no mistake, we're currently in the soft landing, and it's going to get a hell of a lot more volatile, period. It has to. But don't trust me. What do I know? I'm just a former stockbroker and a guy who, when he's not lifting weights or lifting houses, I help people find their dream home and dream lifestyle and negotiate the best deal possible for them if they're looking to buy. And if they're looking to sell, well, then we find them the one buyer on planet Earth willing to pay more than anybody else. So if we can help you with that, please reach out. All my contact information is on the screen. But existing home sales in May were essentially flat. Well, that may be true nationally. I don't suspect it's true here locally or hyperlocally. But let's go into what should give you pause, because back when I started making content, and I've got over, I think, 1,500 videos now on this channel, and my daughter's calling me. I hope she didn't just blow up my StreamYard. I don't know. Sorry about that, Brookie. If you're watching, I love you. Soy, if you're watching, I love you too. But you can't call me when I'm doing a live stream because I can't answer the phone. Where am I? I'm right here. Home builders cut on sluggish housing market. Florida woes. All right. Well, when I started making content, when I started analyzing the market from a different perspective, when I stopped making the same videos that everybody else is making, talking about how great it is to live wherever it is they live, which there's value in that, but I thought it would be more valuable if I shared my experience navigating some of these financial changes and some of the things that I've seen before, the housing market conditions that I see in real time. And I eventually got caught in the trap of combating all of the nonsense bullshit that I see on YouTube, but eventually they get you. If you want to compete, you got to rip off and duplicate in some ways or some forms or fashion. So I've done a little bit of that too. But I said from the get-go, when builders start tipping their hand, when they start incentivizing the market in ways that they haven't before, that is a leading indicator that the market dynamics have changed. And while I have not seen that in my hyperlocal market yet, I'm seeing it on the periphery. So just recently, within the last week, in oh gosh, where was it? Brain fart, not useful. Palm Beach Gardens, a builder that I've worked with that it's interesting because in Palm Beach Gardens, there is massive new construction. There are some tremendous developments that are being built out there. And one of the premier builders in my market is GL Homes. Well, they built one up in Palm Beach Gardens, Apex at Avenir. It sold out instantly, right? There are several other communities that are next to it. And one of them reached out within the last few days saying, Chris, we will incentivize you to bring a buyer with a 5% commission plus a $5,000 cash bonus for bringing that buyer. Well, I know when a builder, and this is not a quick delivery home at all, this is them just trying to get the inventory off their books. They are feeling financial pain. They are getting squeezed by interest rates. They are getting kicked in the teeth. And that builder, as they move forward, is going to absorb losses on their balance sheet. They need to remove these items from their balance sheet. So we're seeing this type of incentivization happening. And it's happening now in Palm Beach Gardens. It's only a matter of time till it happens here, unless I'm wrong, because as I mentioned, I got 3 phone calls today from people who are looking to live in my hyperlocal market that are all looking to stroke a check for north of $1 million. So I don't suspect that every market is going to be impacted the same way. And where I happen to live in Boynton Beach, Delray Beach, and Boca Raton, there is legitimately no more land to develop. So supply and demand will always dictate price, but Palm Beach Gardens is a little bit different. Port St. Lucie is a little bit different. I'm friends with lots of builders that are in Port St. Lucie that are telling me that they are feeling the pain. They are seeing the signs of what it was like the last time the market crashed. And it's not every market, it's not all of Port St. Lucie, which is why it is critical that if you are thinking about moving to one of these areas, you work with someone who understands exactly what's happening in the market that you're shopping or thinking about selling in. If they don't know the conditions of the market, if they don't understand the dynamics of what's happening, then you are not being served the right way. And if you need help with any of that, just reach out. I'm happy to connect you with an all-star professional. But goes on to say, home builder stock analysts are increasingly worried about the signs of softening in key hotspots like Florida and Texas. Lennar and D.R. Horton were downgraded by Citigroup. Analyst Anthony Pettinari on concerns the housing market could stay sluggish in the second half of this year. Well, I think it's important that when looking for the ability to read the tea leaves as to what's going to happen in the housing market, you just track the housing sector. You just look at what the builders' earnings forecast and what their guidance is. They're going to give us an indication of how weak they see it well before the actual real estate market falls out of bed and collapses. But I know if builders are incentivizing real estate agents with 5% commissions and $5,000 cash bonuses, then it doesn't take a rocket scientist for me to understand that they are in trouble, period. And no, it hasn't translated into their earnings statement yet, but it will. And when it does, you're going to see these equity markets get hit, and they're going to get hit hard. And it's not just the housing market or the builders, although that's obviously that's a sector you want to pay attention to. You can look at other sectors too for weakness, and we're going to cover that also. All right, that takes me to Big Papa Powell, the Fed Chair Powell. I'm going to let him say it because he's going to say it better than I ever could.
I'm allergic to fiscal policy, Chair Powell, but I have heard you talk about the unsustainable debt burden of the United States. And even lately, there's been a sell-off in treasuries after increasing odds that President Trump will be reelected, that there might be a sweep of either party. Doesn't that make you nervous when it comes to the progress you've had on inflation if we do see more expansionary fiscal policy, more deficit, bigger deficits, bigger debt loads?
So I'm gonna give you the traditional answer to some extent, and that is that we just know fiscal policy is a job for elected people. We're not elected people, so we don't comment on it, and particularly in advance of a presidential election, we're not commenting on anyone's particular policies one way or the other. I will say more broadly.
How about you comment on the fact that you're dead broke and hemorrhaging cash? But I'll let him continue.
The United States is running a very large deficit at a time when we're at full employment, and it just is.
We are not at full employment, period. That is a horseshit lie.
The level of debt that we have is not unsustainable. The path that we're on is unsustainable. That's completely non-controversial.
The level of debt that we have is not unsustainable. That is not true, period. And I'm not an economist, so if you are an economist and you disagree, please leave comments and you can educate me in the comment section. But we're issuing new debt to pay off the interest payments on the old debt that we can't pay for. That's sustainable. I don't know where, but not in any place that I would want to live or want my children to grow up in, or my grandchildren or their children to live. We are in serious trouble, which is not sustainable. And that's going to play itself out eventually. But based on what he just said, it is sustainable. So who knows what kind of rabbit they're going to pull out of their hat. But I'll let him continue.
I would have thought that this is something that should be a top level issue. And you do hear this from a lot of elected officials, but it should be a real focus going forward, is how do we get back to a sustainable path? Because you can't run these kinds of deficits in good economic times for very long. I mean, I wouldn't say, I can't really speak to the time, but in the longer run, we'll have to do something sooner or later, and sooner will be better than later.
Well, that's a minute and 37 seconds that I'll never get back. We should do something sooner rather than later because it's sustainable, but it's not really sustainable because you can't really run these types of deficits forever because it's just not healthy in a good economy. But wait, I thought we were in the strongest economy that we've ever seen. I thought we were in the best labor market we've ever seen. Interesting. White collar jobs have been decimated. The middle class doesn't exist. And every one of those white collar jobs workers that lost their job is now in like 3 or 4 side hustles to make up for the difference. That's why the labor numbers are skewed, but they're horseshit. In the interim, what do we have here? Well, I talked about some of the home builders that are showing weakness, and their earnings and guidance and their forecasting is telling us as much, and analysts are starting to downgrade them, but it's still the calm before the storm. The stock market is setting record highs all the time, driven mainly by tech, but it will have its reckoning. In the interim, KKR makes its biggest foray into apartments, betting on rising rents. Pretty sure I heard somebody say once, you will own nothing like it. Well, they're in the process of making that a reality. Private equity firm pays $2.1 billion for more than 5,200 apartment units across the country. Why would the big money be investing in apartments if real estate is such a horrible investment to make? I don't know. Maybe the smart money, the big money, the institutional money, well, obviously they got more money than most people, but maybe they know something that we don't. And that is that real estate and land is scarce. And they're doing everything they can to ensure that they max out the utility of whatever that investment is by increasing rents. And they will go on to say the same thing. So let's see here. KKRs, I'm just reading this. Acquisition. KKR, not to be confused with the KKK, completely different thing, no bueno. KKR's acquisition and other recent major purchases could indicate a growing confidence amongst large investors that rents and values for apartments will soon begin rising again. Rent is already starting to pick up in several Midwest and Northeast cities. they are not alone, because smart money do what smart money do, and smart money monkey see monkey do. Blackstone in April agreed to pay $10 billion for the Landlord Apartment Real Estate Investment Trust, while last month Brookfield bought a portfolio of 7,000 apartments for $1.55 billion. Interesting. The smart money is deploying their liquidity into real estate to max out the opportunity to gouge us with rent forever, because we'll own nothing and like it. They go on to say that investors say they are encouraged by the falling number of construction starts for new apartment buildings, portending lower levels of new supply and faster moving rents by 2026. Even Sunbelt markets, where supply is growing fast, should rebound quickly once new supply slows, KKR said in its report addressing the multifamily market. Well, commercial real estate's about to get devastated. It already has. There's record high vacancy rates. It's going to be very interesting to see what the big money does with these opportunities, but they're going to capitalize on every single one of them. In Florida, we have all types of new regulations as far as condos are concerned. Well, they're not new now, but they are newer, where if the residents of that condo do not have the capital to be able to seeing things to bring that building up to structural code the right way, well, then what you're going to see is those buildings are going to be sold. They are going to lose the opportunity. They're going to lose the condo, and some builder will come in with pennies on the dollar and build another luxury high rise that someone will max out the utility of, and they will squeeze every penny out of every inch of waterfront land that there is, period. And if we get hit with the hurricane, which I think there's one forming right now in the Gulf, and there is mass devastation, and we get hit with the worst case scenario, and the whole state ends up subsidizing citizens because they don't have the money to bankroll this, well, what happens? Well, you're going to see investors come in, and they're going to slide right in. They're going to slide us to the side, and they're going to take advantage of the opportunity, because that's what happens every single time. When there is distress, there are opportunistic, well-capitalized, patient investors that are dying to get their hands on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get waterfront land. But this goes on to say commercial real estate more broadly is still working. I don't know where it's still working, definitely not in California, through its worst downturn in nearly 2 decades, as office builder owners in particular grapple with record high vacancy rates. Well, if you think they're bad now, just realize they're going to get worse. Distress in the apartment market is also on the rise as more landlords miss more payments on variable rate loans. Distressed apartment building sales rose sharply to nearly $1 billion in the first quarter of this year, and investors have raised billions, many billions of dollars with aspirations to buy more troubled properties. This is going to create class warfare across the board at some point. This is exactly what Ray Dalio writes about. It's scary stuff, but this is what's happening, and you can't bury your head in the sand. KKR has made a few other property acquisitions recently. In April, it paid $1.64 billion for a student housing portfolio owned by Blackstone Real Estate Income Trust. And last month, it bought an industrial campus in Nashville. Well, they are making hay while the sun is shining. And while the home builders may be getting cut by analysts, and they may be warning, and their numbers may be going south, shares of KKR are up more than 31% year to date. Interesting. Good to know. Let's look at today's mortgage interest rate, because the 30-year fixed, according to Mortgage News Daily, is 7.13%. If you have perfect credit, and if you don't, it's significantly higher. Which takes us to, and to be clear, I am going to go into the housing stats. I'm going to provide a real-time update as to what's happening in each of the markets that I serve. I'll answer any questions you want to know about any other places too, see if there's any. My tinfoil hat is telling me that soon we will see the shift. Yeah, know it all. We are going to see the shift, and the shit won't be pretty. Okay, so where am I? Mortgage rate predictions for the next 5 years. Well, this is what we all want to know about. Where will mortgage interest rates be in 5 years? And they go on to tell us that recent analyses and expert forecasts suggest a period of fluctuation in mortgage rates in the United States. My daughters are 9 and 10, and they could have made that expert statement without any type of formal education or schooling. The average 30-year fix has crossed 7% in 2024, with expectations of a gradual decrease over the year, assuming the Federal Reserve implements anticipated interest rate cuts. This aligns with projections from the Mortgage Bank Association, which anticipates that 30-year fixed rate mortgages will end 2024 at 6.1%, with a further decline to 5.5% by the end of 2025. And maybe that's true. And maybe it's not. But I suspect, despite all of the window dressing and all of the horseshit that Jay Powell just said, I don't think interest rates are going. They may dip a little bit. And I would love for everybody to be able to right now do the thing that I hate when people say, but I'm going to say it anyway: marry the house, date the rate. Well, if that was certain, then I would say absolutely go for it. But it's not certain. And if you've made life choices based on the thought or the theory or the promise or the bullshit that that's going to happen, and then it doesn't happen, and your ARM or your adjustable rate mortgage skyrockets in a few years, guess what we're going to be looking at? The exact same thing that we were looking at last time. And that's happening right now. It's happening every day. I speak to investors on a daily basis who are being squeezed out of their Airbnb or their VBRO or whatever rental they thought was going to be a moneymaker. What they did not anticipate was that interest rates would continue to go higher. They did not anticipate that the inflationary effects of everything would squeeze the profitability out of their investment. So there's a lot of folks right now that are holding the bag that desperately want to get out of the dog that they bought. It's not what they thought it was. And it wasn't because they are bad or their agent was bad, although their agent was bad. It's because they just didn't run the numbers the right way. Everybody seems to want to do it with rose-colored glasses on, and that's not the way to do anything. You always need to price in the worst case scenario all the time. That way, if it happens, you don't get hurt. But the market is always right. And if you're getting squeezed out now, please call me, because it's only going to get worse. And as more people start to feel that pain, you can bet your sweet Bippy there's going to be a lot more inventory that hits the market. And we're going to go into the numbers. They will speak for themselves. No spin zone here. But when there is a tremendous amount of inventory and there's not a tremendous amount of buyers, you can 1000% know that prices are going downward. And you don't want that, especially if you are in an equity rich situation right now. And for the most part, unless you bought in the last 2 years, you are very likely sitting on a metric shit ton of home equity. All right, so preparing for mortgage rate changes in the next 5 years. Stay informed. This is great information. Know the difference between a fixed versus an adjustable rate mortgage. I think that falls under category number 1. Refinancing opportunities. Okay. Budget for fluctuations. This is something that a lot of people screwed the pooch on this one. They did not budget for fluctuations to the upside. They only budgeted for fluctuations to the downside. Improve your credit score, save for a larger down payment. I'm not going to read the rest of this. It's nonsense. All right, let's go to my good friend ReVenture and the wonderful app that they've put together. Now, you may ask, Chris, why are you using ReVenture's app? I am using ReVenture's app just to show exactly how big Florida is. And I always take it for granted that people understand how big Florida is. They don't. I often get phone calls from people that are interested in moving to Florida, but they're nowhere near where I am. So I figured I would show you where I am relative to the rest of the state. I am over here in Boynton Beach, which is, can I find my actual zip code? 33472, 3473, where are you? All right, we're gonna stay at 33472 because I can't. Don't tell me I can't do something. I'll figure it out. Make the screen bigger, Chris. Here we go. All right. 33473. Home value growth year over year, 4%. 2023 was 920, 775, and in May 2024, it's 957, 839. But here's where I am in Boynton Beach, West Boynton Beach. And you can see how insanely large the state is. 500 plus miles wide, and it is a huge peninsula. So if you were calling me and you're interested in moving to Tallahassee, I'm probably not going to be able to serve or support you at the highest level. If you live in Crestview or Destin, shout out to my friends Kevin and Michelle who are up in Destin. They are the best. Check out their channels. But I can't serve and support you the right way. It is not geographically desirable. The good news is I know all-star professionals that I know, like, and trust have done business with in the past and have vetted them. So if you are looking to buy or sell anywhere in the state of Florida or really anywhere in the country, please reach out. I will hook you up with an all-star that will definitively negotiate the best deal humanly possible, irrespective of whether you're looking to buy or sell. But that's what it is. And what you might notice, data point home value growth year over year. Red means it is smoking in hot. And essentially what you have is different shades of red throughout all of the areas that I service. But we're going to go granular here. Oh, that's not the one I want to look at. Let's start with the most recent data that was put out by the Realtor Association. And this is high level. We're starting macro. We're going to go micro. But this is the state of Florida. And I know that it's July, but this is very lagging up until it's not. And we'll get to that too. But I keep hearing about the massive correction, the massive collapse that's happening. And what should be pretty obvious is that's not really happening, at least as of May. So median sales price up 1.6%, average sales price up 5%. But the numbers that you should definitively pay attention to are the month supply of inventory, which are up 63%. That is a big number. And that is a trend we need to pay attention to because we are starting to see an uptick in inventory in many markets. But the time to contract's taking longer, time to sales taking longer. New listings are on the uptick also, up 15%. This is again for the state, but that's what it is. What's also interesting, the foreclosure market, the REO market in the state of Florida, while still relatively a small number in that it's only 188 closed foreclosures, that number's up almost 57%, which is definitely something to pay attention to. Short sales are down 10%. I don't think there's any correlation to the two of those, but it is what it is. And we're going to keep on trucking. That's the state of Florida as of May. But unlike everything I just saw when I looked up housing market, I don't see any evidence of a collapse on a macro level. What I do see and what you will find are anomalies. You will, if you look and you hunt and you search, you will definitively find sellers that are in distress. Those sellers are target-rich environments for investors. There are people who are feeling financial pain, and there are lots of people who overprice their homes. So there are lots of opportunities to score deals in the market, depending where you're at and what the temperature of the market is, where you happen to be shopping. So I started this with talking about my clients where we negotiated a $300,000 discount from list, which again, not to blow up my own spot, it was overpriced to begin with. They did get a good deal. They are walking into equity, but it was overpriced to start with. Same week, different family, we found a property, which was their dream home. It was on the street they desired to be on. They used to live on that same street. The house was turnkey perfect. The house was on the market for a matter of hours before we showed it. We were the first showing. And as we left, there was a line of people looking to get in. So while one sat on the market for 3 months and they got crickets, the other was priced the right way. It was in the right condition. They had multiple offers right out the gate. And the reason that our contract was accepted was because I was in rapport and have a relationship with the other agent. They bought, and it wasn't me really, I was going to say, they bought the line of bullshit I was selling, but it wasn't a line of bullshit. I simply told the story. I told them about my clients and how they used to live on that street and that this is their dream home. And so they accepted our contract. Even though our terms were not as good as some of the others, they liked us. And relationships, being friendly, being nice, being cooperative, being professional, go a long way. They wanted to do a deal with us. So we got that one under contract, and then we negotiated after we got the property under contract, because in case you don't know, what you go under contract for is not necessarily what you are going to pay. You are simply locking that home up so that nobody else can buy it through the inspection and appraisal period. And if you know how to negotiate, chances are you'll be able to negotiate a discount further from there, again, depending on the strength of the market. Because if they had, I don't know, several cash offers that were significantly higher with no contingencies, you could bet your sweet bippy when I tried to negotiate, they would tell me to beat it, pound salt, send the cancellation. None of that happened. I called their bluff and we got a little bit of a discount. But clients are happy, sellers happy, everybody's happy, and that'll close soon. That's the state of Florida. Let's go into a more granular look at every zip code in Palm Beach County. And I'm not going to read all of them, but I think it's important, especially given that much of the content that I see is talking about this massive correction that's happening and the massive collapse that's happening. And while it is true there are isolated incidents, which will stack, which will create a trend, and at some point the tide will definitively turn, because things don't go up forever, ever. There's a rise and fall of everything, including nations, which we seem to be experiencing right now. But the narrative that I see is not my experience, right? So West Palm Beach, year over year percent change in 33401, 63%. That's ridiculous. Then we got 23.5%, then 26%, then 46.7%. Then damn near 69%. Boca Raton. Boca Raton loves the 69. Boom, boom. 68.7%. Chris, don't be such a filthy pig. Boca Raton, 33433, free. 33.3%. Boynton Beach, 55.6% to the upside. But right next door, 33436, down 10%. But by and large, what you're seeing is massive, whopping year over year percent gains. Year over year, massive equity creation. And equity isn't real until it's realized. So if you're feeling financial stress, or if you're feeling like you're not secure in your job, or your income is going to take a hit, please do not predicate your future on the idea or the theory that you're sitting on a metric shit ton of home equity, because that shit will disappear instantaneously when the market shifts. And it's not going to start in the real estate market, although you will see cracks, you will see some weakness in different places. It's going to start in the stock market. Follow the leading indicators, follow the trends, pay attention to what the equities, what these home builders are saying, also what the retail sector is saying. What was it? Nike just missed their quarterly numbers big time. Macy's just slashed its full year's guidance and their earnings. Levi's, which I haven't really heard of up until I was looking up companies that missed their earnings. Of course, I know Levi's blue jeans, but they're not exactly what I would describe as trend setting these days or necessarily popular. But they're getting blown out. Their numbers suck. Walgreens is closing a ton of non-performing stores. Hooters, saying it ain't so. They're shutting down Hooters. Who doesn't love a good Hooter? Hooters shutting down stores. Red Lobster shutting down stores. CarMax dropped 33%. They're getting decimated. And I know the banking system is not realizing the losses from these auto repos that are happening on a daily basis. When they do, they're not going to be capitalized the right way. And we just heard Big Papa Powell talk about the deficits and the money that they don't have. There is no bailout. Well, if there's a bailout coming, then so's hyperinflation. It's not good. Things are not good. And they need to wholesale fix the problem, drain the swamp. And that wasn't meant to be political. Jupiter up 36.7%. Delray Beach up 35%. Boca up 42%. South Bay up 57%. I mean, the list goes on and on. This is crazy here. Buy dirt. West Palm taking it on the chin, down 25%. But 37% gains, 34% gains, 40.5% gains. Yes, there are some losers, but they're the minority. And overall, we've got just massive whopping gains in Delray Beach, Boynton Beach, Boca Raton, Wellington, Jupiter, Fort Lauderdale, Coral Springs, Parkland. Massive whopping gains year over year. Lake Worth, massive whopping gains, 55%. Loxahatchee, massive whopping gains, 36%. Pokey, where, how was it up 54%, but there were no sales? I don't know. Not sure I trust the accuracy of this report anymore, but it is what it is. No sales. Jupiter, 49% gain, 54% gain. South Bay, low price point, 400% gain. If we could just continue to get 400% gains everywhere, well, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. Let's see here. Boynton Beach, 33435, up 51%, up 67%, up 40%. This is ridiculous. Lake Worth, up 125%. Delray Beach, up 88%. Am I reading the wrong thing? I think I swiped. Let's get out of this. Let's get into the more current stuff. Now, to be clear, wow, we got 36 people watching. Thank you for tuning in. You mean the world to me. I appreciate it. I hope you find some of this valuable. And if not, I love you anyway. It's all good. But I want to take a look at what's happening in the beginning of this month. And yes, this is going to be very skewed because we're only 3 days into July. But this is real-time information. I started to do this on the last day of the month, which was Sunday, and then I didn't, which is regrettable because I lost the opportunity to show what happened in the month of June. Everything resets at the beginning of the month. But I was shocked to see how much the average sold price had increased in both Boynton, Delray, and Boca. All of them double-digit gains. And when I started the month, and I did a live stream earlier in the month talking about what was going on, I'm going to say the same thing that I said then, which is it's too early to make any real conclusion as to what's actually happening in the market 3 days into the market. But this is what we got so far, so we'll go with it. Boca Raton, average sold price, and we're comparing the same time period in July versus June. And what you can see is we've got one sale versus none. Actually, it's not true. Versus a closed sale. Nope, I can't read. The active average price is down 0.4%. I've got my reading spectacles on now, and the average sold price is $2,027,000. not applicable, not enough data. It's too early to really make any sense of this. So it's probably a little bit of a waste of time. Not going to spend a lot of time with the sold price, but what I will point out is the month's supply of inventory, because what you can't help but notice is the month's supply of inventory upticked in May versus April, 12.8%. And right now it's sitting at 3.7 months supply of inventory. Those numbers are on the uptick. If you look at the current versus previous year to date, it's up damn near 19%. Current versus the same quarter a year ago, it's up 22%. So we are seeing, you can look at the graph here, we're starting to see an uptick in supply. Some of that is seasonal because it's summer. Some of that is not seasonal. It's financial. But that's Boca Raton. Let's look at Boynton Beach. Boynton Beach. And trust me, we're going to get into something here that I find to be completely hilarious, which has very little to do with real estate, but it needs to be discussed because this is my channel. I can do whatever I want. All right. So what do we got so far? Well, in Boynton Beach, May versus April, month supply of inventory actually decreased 6.5%. So far, in the first few days of this month, the first 2 days of this month, it's down 80.5%. It dropped from 36.3 months to 7.1 months. I can promise you that number will change, so don't really pay too much attention to it. But what you can't help but notice is that it's increasing, right? We had a big spike here in the beginning of the year, and it seems to be on the downtick, but time will tell. I noticed that in many of the communities that I service, particularly Canyon Trails, there's a lot more homes for sale. Why is that? It's summer. Most of these families want to get out of their home during the summer so they can position themselves for whatever the future holds. And conversely, buyers want to be in next school year. So that's Boynton Beach. See if there's any requests here. Dion King, you the man. I bought my first home in West Delray last year. I follow your channel so I don't drive myself crazy worrying about my investment. Dion, set it and forget it, period. Don't look at Zillow. Don't look at anything. If you can afford your home and you're not worried about making the payment, unless you bought it for cash, which is even better, and you're not concerned about those things, they're not causing you financial distress, there's really nothing to worry about, assuming your timeline is long. Because let's pretend, and this is the exact same conversation I had with my sister when she purchased the home. At the time, she was buying a home in Canyon Trails, and she was buying it it was the highest sale ever recorded at that point in Canyon Trails. And nobody wants to buy the most expensive home in a neighborhood ever. They always want to buy the lowest priced home in the highest priced neighborhood. If they're value shoppers, if you got money up the yin yang and you're super affluent, well, then you don't care about it. You get what you want, and you don't mind paying for it. But most people don't want to pay the high water mark, right? Polo Trace is nice. Dion, I'm not even a little bit irritated that you didn't call me to help you negotiate the best deal humanly possible. It's all good. Reach out, tell your friends. I love referrals. I love you anyway. But it's all good. If you ever need help with anything, give me a shout. But getting back to my sister. So she was a little bit concerned that she was overpaying for this home. And it was a competitive market then. It was during the frenzy. And we were able to negotiate. And again, it was all strength of relationship. It was all rapport. It was me doing lots of things that most people don't know how to do that are allegedly professionals. But the seller was going to, and they were in the process of accepting a contract. And I managed to advocate for my sister and get a brief delay. I got a 3-hour reprieve for them not to make a decision because I definitively was going to present a better and higher offer. So please don't make a decision, wait 3 hours, and I guarantee you I've got your buyer. And sure enough, I did. And I won't go into all the details that I did to play games to make sure that she looked better on paper than she actually was, which is not manipulating the system at all. It was not committing any type of fraudulent activity. It was window dressing the contract to make it appear more robust than it needed to be. But she got the home. And when it was appraised, she walked into $100,000 of equity. And since then, the home has appreciated in value by several hundred more $1,000s. Now, again, that's not real money until the house is sold. But I asked her, if you bought the home today at the all-time high, and tomorrow when you wake up, you find out your home is worth zero, were you planning on selling it anyway? No. How long are you planning on being in this house? Well, she's got 2 young kids, and she intends to live there until they're done with, at minimum, middle school, but presumably high school too. So you got 18 years. There's nothing to worry about. If the market was to go to zero, just like we talked about KKR and these investors that are buying up every distressed asset that they can, just like they did during the great financial crisis, eventually supply and demand and free market capitalism will do what it does. And there's no shortage of people who want to be in Florida yesterday. And I suspect it's only going to get worse as the election results come in and become more real. But either way, it's an upside for Florida. And I don't see Florida home prices really doing much other than appreciating up until something breaks. And we're going to get into that here soon. So Dion, set it and forget it. Don't worry about it. You're all good. All right, where am I? Chris, where are you? All right, so that was month supply of inventory in Boynton Beach. Now we're going to look at Delray. This one's for you, Dion. Sweet mother of mercy. Month supply of inventory so far in the first 2 days of July is down 79% from 13.8 months to 2.9. Well, that will change as the month goes on. Nothing to fear here, but you see a similar trend. We had the big spike at the beginning of the year in terms of inventory, damn near 7 months, 7.2. And right now we're sitting at, give me a beat, 3.6. 3.6 months is still a seller's market. Now, it's not the insane, frenzy, crazy market that it once was, where there were hours of supply. It was hours of supply, not months of supply, but that's still a seller's market. And if you price your home the right way, irrespective of what the inventory might be, you can create a market within a market to ensure you find the one buyer on planet Earth willing to pay more than anybody else, which we specialize in. So if you need help with that, let me know. All right. Whoa. This is completely distorted, but it's fun to point out because it clearly refutes some of these other content creators that are talking about the massive collapse that's happening right now. Outside of the collapse that I'm starting to see from home builders who are incentivizing the market because they are starting to feel the pain of their balance sheets. But average sold price, bar the door, Sally, so far in the first 2 days of July, up 137%, period. That's the reverse market crash that we're seeing right now. Right now, Delray Beach, pat yourself on the back. You have not realized, you have an unrealized gain of 137% in the first 2 days of July. So happy 4th of July. Independence Day. You financially independent. You just made 137%. Woohoo! Oh, but you're screwed as far as month supply, because month supply is down 80%, down to 2.9 months. But again, these numbers are distorted, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time with them. Which takes me to ask me about any city you want or any, where am I? I don't know where I am. I'm here. We are at the Altos Research, not to be confused with Altoids, which I could probably use because my mouth is dry, and a little minty Altoid would probably feel really good right now. But I'm doing this for my friend Kevin and Michelle, my friends Kevin and Michelle, who are in Destin, Florida. They may say out of the blue, Chris, what's going on in Destin, Florida right now? And I would say, well, this week, the median list price for Destin, Florida is just under 1.4 million, with the market action hovering around 28. I have no idea what that means. But according to Altoid research, it's a 28, which means it's trending to a buyer's market. Inventory is held steady at or around 212. So what we can see are the metrics to the right, and I'm not going to read them because you can read them yourselves, but the average days on market is 141, median rent is 3,000, and buyers have a slight advantage. Well, they have a more than slight advantage if I'm representing them and negotiating for them. But those are homes, single family homes. Let's look at condos. Condos, a little bit different. Median list price is just under 564 with the market action index hovering around 25. It's about the same as last month's. All right. Median rent is 2,200. Anybody else got a play? Orlando, Clark Norton, I got your back. Let's see what's going on in Orlando for single family homes as per Altos, not to be confused with Altoid research. Orlando, Kentucky, Oklahoma, West Virginia. No, let's go with Florida. All right. As of today, Wednesday, July 3rd, this week's median list price is $525. Well, 48% have had price reductions. 3% have had price increase. 4% were relisted. And the median rent is $2,600. What I'm curious to know, well, maybe it's only 3 days into the month that they don't have any sold data, but list price means nothing. I'm really more concerned about where they sold, but I don't see that. So we will go to condos in Orlando. And what do we see? 243 with the market action index around 35. So hovering right here above the red, and the red, white, and blue means one thing. It means America. It's America. All right. Well, that's going to, let's see here. Any other shouts out? Orlando, any other cities? Anybody interested? Going once, going twice, going 3 times? All right. So now I'm switching gears here a little bit because I saw this and I thought it was quite interesting. And after having watched the debate the other day, it was interesting because I watched it with my 9-year-old and she was not at all interested in the debate whatsoever. And so she didn't watch it. She was watching something else while I watched it with the headphones on and watched it on my phone. However, for the closing statements, I asked her to listen to both candidates speak, and then I asked her what she thought of both people or who she thought the better candidate was. And what she said was she felt really sorry for the grandpa who needed to go to sleep. And it's sad. Like it's elder abuse. Like I don't get any joy out of watching Biden fall apart at the podium. Like it's sad, and it does not bode well for the strength of this country whatsoever. But I then heard more about Donald Trump's Project 2025, and I hadn't really been paying too much attention to it. So I did a little bit of research today, but I found this video and I'm going to share it with you.
What's something that you want? I really want people to wake up and understand how bad Project 2025 is. I really, really, really want that. And I really want the people from my community, the Black community, the trans community, any minority community, understand that these people that are rallying for Trump do not have their best interests at heart at all. You know, and I want them to look past that stimulus check that they got. And like this person and these agendas are not good for our country. coming. Like November is so important, and I really want people to take that serious. All right.
Okay. So those people who are supporting a presidential candidate are the problem, but pushing the trans agenda is a good thing. I don't know. I'm not trans. I really curious what you think. Any comments? Project 2025 is BS. Evening, Volker. Evening, Pepper. Yeah, so let's do a little bit of a deeper dive into that because why not? But I found that to be very interesting, right? Love it or leave it. Take it seriously. Don't take it seriously, but whatever you do, don't bury your head in the sand and always do more research. Always seek the truth. Always search for data that can be proven, period. And the truth will set you free. And the numbers don't lie, unless they're put out by the Labor Department, in which case they are grossly misreported. Okay, so do a little bit. So we heard a little bit about Project 2025. Project 2025 would allow financial disaster to bolster Wall Street's bottom line. Maybe that's true. I don't know. Let's see what it says. Nearly 3 decades of deregulation opened the doors for banks, investment companies, insurers, and other firms to engage in excessive risk-taking that culminated in the 2000 and 2008 financial crisis. While these financial actors profited handsomely, the cost of their behavior was borne by others. During the Great Recession that followed, the United States experienced the most significant sustained job losses since the Great Depression. Unless, of course, you read today's Labor Department number, which will tell you that that's clearly not true. We've got the most robust job market and strongest economy in the history of the world, which worsened wealth gaps between the middle class and wealthy Americans. To address this, Congress passed the Dodd-Frank Act in 2010 to curb the excesses of the financial institutions that brought the economy near collapse. Okay, so far I don't disagree. There is an extensive set of plans to overturn post-crisis policies that protects consumers, investors, and stable functioning of financial markets. But the agenda also includes new limits on regulators' capacity to step in during periods of instability. So let's just break that down a little bit, because I've noticed that yes, there are the Dodd-Frank Act and some of these protectionary measures that were put into the lending system in order to ensure that we don't have the same problem that we did last time with the bullshit loans, with rampant fraud in that space, right? There was just it was an implosion. It was a house of cards. Everything fell apart because the borrowers were not qualified to borrow the money. They didn't have the income, period. They didn't have the assets, period. What I'm starting to see, and I predicted this a long time ago, is, and you can go back into the, I don't know, there's 1,500 videos on here, but I talked about it. Just like I predicted that the builders, when they start to incentivize the market with large commissions and cash bonuses, when they tip their hand, I know that that's a pure tell that they're feeling some pain, that the market dynamics are shifting, that there is change happening that's severe enough for them to do that. I also know, and I predicted, that the lending industry would do similar things. They would create different products, and the government would create different programs in order to keep this thing moving. And we've seen that. There are all types of different programs that are being rolled out as we speak, and new products which will be rolled out as we speak to allow for subprime borrowers to get into homes. And in the interim, the government doesn't care, because we just saw at the beginning of this, what is big money, institutional government money doing? They're buying everything they possibly can so that you can rent it from them forever. But they'll stack you up to feel like you are part of the American dream up until they snatch it away from you because the market collapsed or the dollar collapsed. I don't think that is, I don't think that's good. And I don't think that should be done. I think there needs to be massive regulation that just stomps that out, period. And yeah, it's painful. We're in for some pain. We're in for some volatility. But let's go on, because it goes on to say it would restrict the Federal Reserve lender of last resort, which reminds me of Citizens Insurance, which is the insurer of last resort. Interesting that they're both essentially the same thing. But the lender of last resort function that allowed troubled banks to borrow money quickly. This lending backstop has been central to confining the severity of economic harms throughout the financial crisis. Well, I don't agree with that at all, because the stimulus and the money that was injected into the system did not confine the severity of economic harms throughout the financial crisis. In fact, it exacerbated, it worsened, it created a much bigger problem that we have yet to deal with. And the reckoning from that is going to be really painful. Some people are feeling it now, but it's going to get a lot worse. And I don't think that there should be the Fed stepping in and bailing out the system. I think the system has to break. I think it has to fail. And then I think it needs to be privatized in some form or fashion, or there needs to be some sort of bipartisan effort to fix this fucking thing, which is a fucking complete disaster. And sorry, my language is strong, but that's the reality of it. You can't continue to artificially stimulate the economy or the world forever without there being massive hell to pay. And it's only going to get worse. And I suspect home values are going to suffer, depending on what side of the street you're on, suffer the same fate. They're going to experience a reverse market crash, because every market's different. I'm not speaking for the country as a whole, but Florida home values, barring a break in the system, are going to continue to go higher. And it will become a series and a system of haves versus have-nots. I don't want that. And it is what it is. The market's always right. All right. These policy changes would foster financial market risk-taking while kneecapping regulators' ability to quell instability. It is easy to see just how irresponsible this is by calculating the present-day cost of a repeat of the Great Recession. Okay, well, they've already created a repeat. They've already guaranteed a repeat of the Great Recession. It's just a matter of when the bottom falls out. And it's going to start, it will start in the stock market. It will be predictable based on the earning statements that you see from the companies that are in the sectors that you need to be paying attention to. But when you consistently see Home Depot miss by a landslide and then lower their guidance for the next few years, you know that there is economic hell to pay. When you see Airbnb lowering their guidance and lowering their forecast for future years, you know that there's weakness in that sector. When Yum Brands, which is Pizza Hut and KFC, when they are missing their earnings and guiding lower across the board, you know that there is economic hell to pay coming, because people are stopping their spending habits. And it's only going to take one bank to go illiquid for there to be a run on the bank, for there to be real fear about the banking system, to cause a massive, epic collapse. And it only took 10% of the overall market to be in distress to bring down the national market by 30%. It doesn't take much. And we saw what the stats were for Florida when I went through that last slide. There was only 188 foreclosures. But when that number upticks, and it will, and we're somewhere around 10%, just know that there is going to be hell to pay. And if you're on the right side of that, fantastic. You're set up for generational wealth. If you bought a home the day before the market falls out of bed and gets cut in half, if your timeline is long, nothing to worry about. Don't even look at it, because you aren't planning on selling anyway. As long as your timeline is long, you will make up for it and then some, because over time, the market does what the market does, and land is scarce, specifically in Florida. So over time, you will recoup and be profitable, assuming you don't die. and I'm not wishing that for anybody. So I think we're going to wrap this up. I've been talking for a while here. Miami will be the financial capital of our country in the next 10 years. Yep, would not surprise me at all. There's a ton of major investment firms that have moved, and technology firms that have moved to Miami and the South Florida area, which is great. But yeah, welcome to Florida, and hope you guys had some fun with me tonight. I know I did. Hope you enjoy your 4th of July, maxed out the day to the fullest. If I can ever help in any way, shape, or form, you know where to find me. But God bless America. And if nobody's told you that they love you today, just know that I do. And I'll see you on my next video.